EllenDegeneres thought her signature ambush-style interview would leave Karoline Leavitt flustered and defensive, but instead Ellen was left stunned. It began with what seemed like an ordinary booking. The producers of the Ellen DeGeneres show had reached out to Karoline Leavitt's team, pitching a lighthearted segment focused on young women breaking barriers in politics. The atmosphere backstage was noticeably tense even before the cameras started rolling. "Welcome back," Ellen began as the applause died down. "My next guest is a former White House deputy press secretary who's now launching a new conservative advocacy group. Please welcome Karoline Leavitt." Leavitt walked onto the set smiling confidently, waving to the audience as she approached Ellen for the customary hug and greeting. The applause was polite but noticeably restrained compared to the show's typical enthusiasm. "Thank you for having me, Ellen," Leavitt said as she settled into the guest chair. "Of course. So great to have you here," Ellen replied with her characteristic smile, though viewers at home might have noticed it didn't quite reach her eyes. "So, I understand you worked in the Trump White House?" "That's right," Leavitt nodded. "I served as assistant press secretary and later as director of strategic communications for—" "And now you're starting some kind of political group?" Ellen interrupted, clearly uninterested in Leavitt's full credentials. "Yes, we're launching the Future Forward initiative, focused on engaging young Americans in civic—" "That's wonderful," Ellen interjected again, turning slightly toward the audience with a knowing glance. "Now, before we talk about that, I thought we could play a little game." Leavitt's expression registered momentary surprise, but she quickly recovered. "Sure, sounds fun." "Great." Ellen clapped her hands together. "We call this game Defend or Denounce. I'll read some quotes, and you just tell us whether you defend them or denounce them. Simple, right?" The audience murmured with anticipation as a large screen behind them lit up with the game's title in bright letters. "Let's start with this one," Ellen continued, picking up a set of cards from the side table. "There were very fine people on both sides. Defend or denounce." The intention was immediately clear. This wasn't a game. It was a carefully crafted trap designed to either force Leavitt into defending controversial statements or appearing to betray her political allies. "Interesting game," Leavitt responded, her voice steady. "But that quote is actually missing critical context. In that same statement, the former president explicitly condemned neo-Nazis and white nationalists. The full transcript shows he was referring to people debating monument removal, not extremists." Ellen's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "So, you defend it?" "I defend accuracy in media," Leavitt replied without hesitation, "and I think your viewers deserve better than selectively edited quotes designed to mislead." A few scattered coughs broke the uncomfortable silence that followed. Ellen glanced briefly at her producer before continuing. "Okay, let's try another one," she said, flipping to the next card. "I don't even wait, and when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Defend or denounce." Leavitt remained composed, studying Ellen's expression carefully before responding. The host's smirk was barely concealed as she waited for her guest to stumble. "You know what? Let's make this more interesting," Ellen suddenly added, her tone sharpening. "Since you work so closely with the former president, perhaps you can tell us, has he ever acted that way around you or your female colleagues? Any personal experiences you'd like to share with our audience?" She leaned forward with an exaggerated look of concern that drew uncomfortable laughter from parts of the audience. "Ellen," Leavitt said, leaning forward slightly in her chair, "can I ask a question?" Ellen shifted in her seat. "Well, that's not really how the game works, but sure. When your producer contacted my team, they specifically said this interview would focus on my work empowering young women in politics. Was that ever actually the plan? Or was this ambush the intention all along?" A noticeable hush fell over the studio. Even Ellen seemed momentarily at a loss for words. "We like to mix things up and have some fun," Ellen finally responded with a forced chuckle. "Our audience enjoys these games." "I see," Leavitt nodded thoughtfully. "Well, with respect to your audience, I think they might enjoy something else even more. An authentic conversation." She turned directly toward the audience now. "How many of you are tired of seeing people from different political backgrounds treated like caricatures instead of human beings? How many would prefer hearing about actual ideas instead of playing gotcha games? To Ellen's visible surprise, many audience members began applauding and nodding. Sensing the unexpected shift, Leavitt continued. Ellen, your show became iconic because you championed kindness and understanding. You famously said we should be kind to everyone, even people we disagree with. That message resonated with millions of Americans who are exhausted by division. Ellen's expression had transformed from confident to concerned. We are kind, she said defensively. This is just a fun segment we do with political guests. Do you, though? Leavitt asked, her tone respectful but direct. Would you be willing to show us clips of you playing this exact game with progressive politicians who've appeared on your show? The producer began making cutting motions from the sidelines, but Ellen was now caught in a dilemma of her own making. We've had all sorts of games with different guests, she said vaguely. Let me suggest something, Leavitt offered. Instead of this game, why don't we talk about what we might actually agree on? For example, did you know our initiative is partnering with women across the political spectrum on increased childcare access for working mothers? Or that we're working on a bipartisan bill to address the epidemic of social media-related depression among teenage girls? Several audience members applauded again, louder this time. Ellen glanced at them with surprise before turning back to Leavitt. That actually sounds interesting, Ellen admitted, her rehearsed approach clearly derailed. Tell us more about the social media work. What followed was something no one in the production team had anticipated. A genuine, substantive 15-minute conversation about policy initiatives, personal experiences, and shared concerns that transcended political labels. As Leavitt spoke passionately about helping young women develop confidence and resilience regardless of their political views, the audience's response grew increasingly warm. That's all the time we have, Ellen finally said, as the producer signaled from offstage. She seemed genuinely reluctant to end the conversation, a stark contrast to her initial approach. Karoline Leavitt, thank you for being here. Thank you for the conversation, Leavitt responded with a sincere smile. As the show cut to commercial, audience members gave a standing ovation, something the producers had neither planned for nor expected. Backstage, Ellen's executive producer was already receiving calls from network executives who had been watching the unexpected turn of events unfold live. Hey, if you liked the video, please subscribe and like. You would help me a lot. Thanks for watching and see you next time.